Hi, I'm Mary Louise Kelly, host of All Things Considered. I'm coming to Oklahoma City this fall, and I would love for you to join me. On November 4th at 7:30 p.m., I'll be at Oklahoma City Community College for an evening of stories, conversation, and a look behind the scenes of how we bring you the news every day. For tickets and information, visit kosu.org/tickets. Again, that is kosu.org/tickets. Can't wait to see you there.
The Spy now has its own beer. In collaboration with Stone Cloud Brewing Company, the Spy Hoppy Pilsner is the perfect drink of choice as we wind down the summer. The beer can be found at Stone Cloud's tap rooms in Oklahoma City and Stillwater through the end of September, and 25% of each pint or six-pack sold goes directly to support local independent music in Oklahoma. Find all the details at kosu.org.
This month on Focus Black Oklahoma. Join us as we discuss how states and universities are working to restrict student speech in support of Palestinians on campuses across the United States. Discover the nonprofit Mom Congress and their efforts lobbying Congress to address maternal care, parental leave, and childcare challenges. Hear how the Tulsa-based organization Chef Kulture is working to promote food sovereignty in Black communities through their national network. Explore the upcoming Black Portraitures conference hosted by NYU Tulsa on Friday, October 3rd. And listen to the third part of our Culture and Music series. All of this and more on Focus Black Oklahoma.
Focus Black Oklahoma is sponsored by Phillips Seminary, presenting Pride at Phillips on October 13th with guest lecturer Dr. Cody Sanders. Learn more at ptstulsa.edu/events.
This is Focus Black Oklahoma. I'm Jacob Littlebear. As the war in Gaza approaches its 2-year mark, criticism of Israel and support for the Palestinian population has ignited debates over free speech in the United States. Universities have become nexuses of protest against U.S. support of Israel in the conflict, and the federal government's response has been to block education funding for schools and targeting activists for deportation. State governments and universities have begun taking their own actions to curtail pro-Palestine sentiments on campus. Nico Berlin has the story.
No more war! No more weapons, no more.
Over the last 8 months, the Trump administration has rolled out aggressive policies targeting student speech on Palestine. In May, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt signed Senate Bill 942, an act redefining anti-Semitism, discrimination, and harassment in public schools and institutions of higher education. The new law defines anti-Semitism using the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or the IHRA, working definition. It prohibits manifestations of anti-Semitism, including rhetoric targeting the state of Israel. The IHRA states criticism of Israel resembling criticism directed to any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. However, anti-Zionist and pro-Palestinian rhetoric criticizes the colonization of Palestine, a condition unique to the Israeli state. Senate Bill 942 defines an institution of higher education as an institution within the Oklahoma state system of higher education. Under that perimeter, private universities in Oklahoma do not fall under this law. At the University of Tulsa, a budding Students for Justice in Palestine group says it wants to test the extent of the institution's commitment to free speech. Here is Sophia Rahman, a member of the group's steering committee.
Students wear keffiyehs. We generally hang up a flag in the student union pretty often. We have not run into any issues yet.
Sophia says the Students for Justice in Palestine group receives funding from TU Student Government Association. Although there is institutional support from the university, Sophia says students worry about violent reactions.
We table in our student union practically every day of the semester this year. And so the major concern I've gotten, especially in the last 2 days after the murder of Charlie Kirk, has been people are afraid of the consequences of speaking too loudly, because, that happened on the college campus. And a lot of students feel like that could happen to any one of us. And it was very scary to see. So I think that right now is the major concern. Before that, I think more people were concerned about future job prospects. I feel safe, but I think a lot of students do not. And that is our main trouble, is that we have a few students who are ready to do something, and it's hard to convince students to organize something around something that could be dangerous for them.
Tate Hutchinson, a freshman and new member of TU Students for Justice in Palestine, says that he is always thinking about the threat of violence, but wants to teach people the history of Palestine.
We were never taught about this in K through 12. I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody being taught this K through 12, which is an unfortunate reality. What can I myself do for the people of Palestine on my own? And the unfortunate answer is probably nothing. There's probably nothing I as an individual can do. So the answer of, what's the next course of action is to join a group like this.
Across the United States, there are unfolding tests of whether or not pro-Palestinian speech is constitutionally protected.
Today, we are here announcing a lawsuit filed in federal court on behalf of Missouri Students for Justice in Palestine for being excluded.
A state away from TU at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Mizzou Students for Justice in Palestine is suing the university system president and university chancellor Moon Choi. The student organization alleges President Choi violated its First Amendment rights by excluding them from the school's homecoming parade in 2024. The Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, filed the lawsuit on behalf of the student organization. According to court documents, President Moon Choi personally intervened in denying Mizzou Students for Justice in Palestine's homecoming parade application. In an email to the organization, he said the application was rejected to ensure their safety and the safety of parade participants and spectators. According to Isleen Atella, the former president of Mizzou Students for Justice in Palestine, or MSJP, there was zero violence both on and off campus during their events. Here's Isleen on the aftermath of President Choi's rejection of their application.
This led to the Mizzou College Republicans to post a very accusatory statement calling us terrorist sympathizers, countless community members writing blog posts and Facebook posts calling us anti-Semitic terrorists, and saying that there is something so bad that MSJP members did that warranted our denial from the homecoming parade.
Here's Ahmed Kaki, a staff attorney for CAIR, explaining President Choi's violations at a press conference announcing the lawsuit in late August.
Public universities cannot open events for the public for expression like they did with the homecoming parade, then filter which viewpoints they want expressed at these events. The free speech clause of the First Amendment is not subject to the whims of a university president's personal beliefs, like Dr. Choi's opposition to pro-Palestinian voices.
University of Missouri Director of Media Relations and Public Affairs Christopher Ave says the university will defend its decision in the lawsuit. Ave also stated a senior leader of the group was removed from campus for verbal abuse and stalking, but did not specify if this occurred before or after the 2024 parade. When informed of this allegation, Isleen said she was not notified by the university. Here's Isleen again.
This is not just a message for Palestinian students here at Mizzou or here in the U.S. It's a message for all marginalized communities and all students. We can fight back, and we will make our voices heard.
After CAIR and MSJP announced the lawsuit, the MU Board of Curators extended President Choi's contract from 2028 to 2031. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Nico Berlin in Columbia, Missouri.
Across Oklahoma and the country, women are facing unaffordable childcare, rising maternal mortality rates, and a lack of support systems. National problems require national solutions, and Mom Congress, a 501c3 charitable organization, is lobbying for federal legislation to address these gaps. Here's Danielle A. Melton.
What's the hardest job in the world? No, it's not brain surgery. It's not being president. It's motherhood. And the kicker? You don't get a manual, benefits, and very little support. If motherhood were an Olympic sport, we'd all be gold medalists. But instead of podiums, we get piles of laundry. And instead of medals, we get mom guilt. In 2016, my husband and I became parents overnight as foster parents. This shift was bigger than anything I could ever imagine. Even with my extensive background in early childhood education and teaching at the university level, nothing prepared me for the reality check that came with it. I went from leading as an executive in education to suddenly managing all the things: work deadlines, family needs, and my own self-care, which, let's be honest, was usually last on the list. The juggle was real, and it eventually led me to burnout, depression, and feeling like a failure. And I thought, wow, if I, the early childhood expert, am this overwhelmed with all my experiences and resources, what about the moms who don't have the same safety nets? That's when it hit me. The juggle isn't just real, it's rigged. Like being on a game show where the prize is a nap, but the buzzer goes off every time you sit down. Here in Oklahoma, childcare costs average about $10,000 a year, nearly 17% of a household income. That's more than double what the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says is affordable. And in many rural areas, there just aren't enough accredited providers to meet the need. According to the CDC, our state's maternal mortality rate is 31.9 deaths per 100,000 live births, well above the national average of 26.3. And if you're a Black mother in Oklahoma, your risk of dying from pregnancy-related causes is nearly 3 times higher than if you're white. We also have maternity care deserts, counties with zero obstetric care, forcing some women to drive hours just for a checkup, or go without care entirely. And to help put that in perspective, here's Candy Mundan King, a maternal health policy advocate and member of the Virginia House of Delegates, who's been on the front lines of addressing these disparities.
So I think what we see is sort of worsening across the board. You have states like Oklahoma where maternal health is rated as some of the worst in the country. And it's not just about pregnancy and childbirth. It's about access to care. It's about the stress that the high cost of childcare is placing on families and particularly moms.
Hearing stories like this and living it myself, I knew I couldn't just sit in the struggle. I started using my voice on stages and articles for Forbes, here on NPR, not for attention, but to put into words what so many moms feel but don't have the platform to say. We are drowning, and the world is watching like it's a sport. And I wanted to be part of the solution. So what's the solution? For me, it was finding and joining Mom Congress. This is a policy organization for moms in the U.S., where lived experiences meet legislative action. Imagine your PTA, but with direct lines to Congress and a knack for passing bills instead of bake sales. Mom Congress is a membership organization focused on federal policy because we believe all mothers deserve the same support, no matter what state they live in. I started as a member representing Oklahoma mothers, and now I sit on the board, working alongside some of the most passionate advocates in the country to create policies that change lives. They train and empower moms to be powerful advocates, build community, and push forward what's called the Mom's Agenda, a bipartisan package of policies addressing the mother load, childcare, paid leave, maternal health, and more. One of those passionate advocates is Casey Brady, Mom Congress Board Secretary, who came to this work through her own deep personal journey.
In 2023, my daughter Elizabeth was stillborn, and as part of my grief journey, healing, which is still a process that I'm told goes on forever, I discovered the Policy Center for Maternal Mental Health. And so after talking with their executive director, who also was one of the founder of Mom Congress, I needed to get involved, and she thought I would be a good fit.
And Casey's not alone. Many of us came to Mom Congress because we're living the very challenges we're now trying to fix. Mom Congress has been turning lived experience into legislative wins since 2019, helping to pass bipartisan laws like the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Because when moms unite, policy changes. Here again is Candy Mundan King.
paid family medical leave, which is critical, especially when dealing with children who may have special needs or they need extra care. So we saw these policies not as sort of things that were on the outside of maternal care, but a central part of improving the whole maternal experience.
Our most powerful tool? Hill Day. Once a year, moms from across the country meet in Washington, D.C. alongside legislators, advocates, and even celebrities who care about these issues. We spend the day in the halls of Congress, face to face with the people who can make these changes real. Hill Day isn't just about federal laws. Even when D.C. slows down, the connections made there lead to state-level wins, like Virginia's groundbreaking maternal health package, which grew out of cross-state conversations Mom Congress helped spark. Again, we hear from Casey Brady.
There was such a camaraderie and an energy in the room of just like hope and empowerment and really wanting to make a difference. And so I'm really looking forward to us continuing that.
This year, I'll be there, not just as a member, but as a board member, carrying Oklahoma's stories into those rooms. The stories of moms who can't find childcare, who've been failed by our healthcare system, who are doing everything right and still falling through the cracks. And I'm bringing you with me. This is part 1 of our 3-part series. In part 2, we're going to go behind the scenes of Hill Day prep. And in part 3, you'll join us on the Hill, hearing the voices, feeling the urgency, and seeing change in action. Because when mothers unite, there's nothing we can't move. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Danielle A. Melton in North Tulsa.
In May of this year, Oklahoma passed Senate Bill 806, otherwise known as the Food as Medicine Act. The bill aims to expand nutrition services and recognize the importance of food as a contributing factor to public health. A national organization based in Tulsa has been working to empower chefs to be nutrition leaders for their communities. Juddie Williams has details.
Across the country, food access is often described in terms of affordability and health. But for many Black communities, the conversation runs deeper. Food sovereignty, the right to define and control how food is grown, shared, and consumed. From food deserts to fresh harvests, a movement is growing in Tulsa to reclaim food systems in Black communities. Local leaders are shaping the future of Black food sovereignty. Culinary entrepreneurs, national food voices, and community gardeners are planting seeds for the next generation. Chef Chad Cherry and his wife, Karen Pandy Cherry, are co-founders of Chef Kulture in Tulsa. Their work supports Black and Brown culinary professionals through mentorship, collaboration, and stronger food networks. For them, food sovereignty is not just about access to food, but also about equity, health, and community sustainability. They believe that by building relationships and circulating food dollars locally, Tulsa can reshape its food ecosystem. Chef Sherry says the issue is simple. Food is as essential as air or water.
So to me, food should be a basic human right, period. We need air, we need water, we need food. 3 things every human needs to live. It is not. And not just for Black folk, but not for Black and Brown, but the disparities here, right? The health disparities, we are impacted more because of all of the social determinants of health. When you talk specifically about food sovereignty in Black folk, my issue is this. If you control how a person eats, you control how a person lives, right? Mm-hmm. The moment that Black people lost control over how they feed themselves, literally feed themselves, our opportunities were limited.
Karen Pandy Cherry recalls how this reality shows up in the lives of young people.
The stories that we learned from Norland and Carroll City and all of the youth programs we've done, their story of not eating. So you have to imagine that there's a food journal and we give them every day, there's a list and it says breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack.
We had the nerve to put snack
water,
on there.
Right? And you're talking Monday through Sunday, right? And you're seeing gaps all over the page. It's that their food story was linked to a bigger story. So with some of the kids, one girl said, no, I did it. I filled it out. But my mom, when she goes out on dates, she brings leftovers from the date. And that's what my siblings and I eat. She didn't go out on a date this week. And so like when she doesn't do that, we don't get any food, right? And so you're talking about a bigger issue. It's not just the food, it is a parent trying to feed their child. It's the dynamic of the relationships that are coming in and out of these kids' lives.
She also remembers what happens when well-funded projects don't include the community they're meant to serve.
We had a city that approached us that got a grant for $80,000 and they built this big, beautiful garden in the middle of a Black community. And the neighbors would not walk into that garden. They had all of these events, and by the time they came to us after they had spent that money, they're like, yo, we have produce that's just dying. And what's wrong with these residents? And why don't they understand? Now, the people that did it did not look like the residents, but they moved into the community saying, like, we don't understand why they aren't grateful to us. Why won't they walk in? We heard that they don't have access to food, and here we brought, food. And so when we talk about the sovereignty, like if we move from what it means to us and the work that we do, I think it's also important to talk about.
Instead, the Sherrys began focusing on building networks, placing chefs at the center of community ecosystems. Here's Chef Chad.
But did you ever think that you could hook up with nutritionists like Fresh RX, right? They just passed the food as medicine bill. We talked about food access, the fact that if I give someone fresh groceries, they may not know how to use it. Well, it seems like y'all need chefs to prepare that. Can we get paid from the pharmaceutical industry or from the medical industry to pay us to produce food, healthy food, and give it back to your communities? I think we can, right? You look at films. Are we producing? Are we directing? You need food for that. Like you look at telling your stories. We're in a space now where before with the domination of cable, right? If you couldn't get to a major network, your voice couldn't get out there. Now, the major network is my cell phone. My voice can get out to anyone. How are we using our food to tell stories? What we're doing is showing the possibilities. We start with the relational ground. Then we expand the possibilities. And then as we expand possibilities, we are the people who are bringing the connection.
One of those networks includes partnerships with local Black farmers and ranchers. Karen adds,
and we learned so much just from spending the day with
him.
Nate, right?
Yep, Nate Bradford.
We learned about, we took a tour on his land. We learned about the cattle, and, he's got like this deer processing facility. And we learned about the way that he makes things sustainable. And he's going to be one of
our speakers. He'll be on a panel with Farmed Out, which is a new app that's going to be a national application. And its goal is to erase the distance between people and food. They are not just Black centered. But when I met the founder of Farmed Out, I said, we need you in our community, right? Your farmers need to have a more direct line to consumers. Yeah, you can fight that fight, or you can just hook them up with chefs. Guess what? We got Black chefs around the country.
They go on to share how chefs are uniquely positioned at the intersection of opportunity, fostering community networks and strengthening connections across the food ecosystem. First, we hear from Karen, then Chef Chad.
So for us with Chef Kulture and sort of closing the loop on the ecosystem between the growers and the farmers and even the dairy folks, and it is building those relationships and building the trust in all of these different spaces, and then being able to bring all of those people together, because we know that we are they know that if they operate with us, if they plug in with us, like we're gonna operate in a certain way, and the chefs are the point of access.
Are you familiar with network theory? Okay. So that's what we say, right? Like when we talk about ecosystem, that's literally it. So if you have a chef in the middle of this network, right, and then you start drawing spokes to the wheel, right? So first you start with community. Let's say they hired someone in the community, right? Now you start with, we're growing. We're going to train some people. Now you start with feeding some people. Now you start with spending money because I'm going to go to these local farms or even just community stores, right? Now you come back to reinvestment.
And those networks didn't stop at the community level. For Chad and Karen, they became the foundation for something larger, the State of Black Food Conference. The conference took place in Tulsa from August 28th through the 31st. First launched in 2019 in Lauderhill, Florida, the event was designed as an annual gathering to center Black voices in food and culture. This year marked its second convening, bringing the conversation to Tulsa.
This conference is, incredibly important because it's not just a culmination. It's kind of the way that we do things. Chef Kulture is operating all year long. And then we have this annual conference that brings together, 150 to 200, not only chefs, but also, community advocates and nutritionists and, some of the top named culinary professionals across the country will be here for this 4-day event. It's not a food festival. No. It is a thought leadership conference.
In the heart of Black Wall Street, the State of Black Food Conference brought together food leaders from across the country, becoming a stage for strategies on sovereignty, collaboration, and ownership in food systems. Themes we'll hear more about from conference panelists, certified master chef Daryl Schuler, and Chef K.J. Kearney. Chef Kearney explained that achieving sovereignty requires shifting from being consumers at the end of the chain to owners at the beginning.
I was managed by the gentleman who hosted, talent managed by the gentleman who hosted High in the Hall, Stephen Satterfield. And he got out of the food space and he is now making blank t-shirts, right? But he's not just making blank t-shirts, he is working like Black farmers to get the cotton from the source and then milling it to his exact specifications. Because he believes that a part of why we can't ever get ahead or why we don't ever get sovereignty is because we don't own the process. We are always the end of the value chain and not the beginning of the value chain, right? And I think for us to get sovereignty, one of the ways that we can get sovereignty, this is not the only way, but one of the ways is being more at the beginning of the process and not the end.
Chef Schuler also emphasized pairing culinary skill with business knowledge.
I think we need to also create a new generation where they're more business savvy. You can monetize anything. You got skills. I can create vinaigrettes to sell. I can do spices. I can do marinade. Anything with my skill set, I can turn it into some type of revenue. But that's the magic of what we have. Learn the skill set, learn the business, now turn that into a generational revenue stream. Everything that you make can be turned into a revenue stream, not just a flavor. In fact, you got to think bigger than that. But if we can work together and collaborate, because the resources and connections that you have may be beneficial for me and vice versa.
In North Tulsa, Mama Billy Parker embodies those ideas through her Community Pride Garden School. She says the project began in response to her community's lack of access to fresh food.
It was about 2010 maybe, and we was trying to get, we were in a food desert there, and we was fussing about them leaving. He's finna close down, and that was our only store at the time. So how did I start this garden? Okay, so then I moved from there to 52nd and Peoria, and we had several businesses inside. So then I had purchased this property probably in 2017, and a person from Jamaica, not Jamaica, he was from the Dominican, we were friends, and he came up and I had an acre. He came and asked me, can I grow produce on your property? I said, yeah, sure. And boy, that's where it started, where I said I could do that. And then at the time, after I bought it, I said, well, I need somewhere to move. So I ended up moving here, and he grew everything. I mean, it was so beautiful. And this dirt here is black gold. No other dirt is like that. And North Tulsa has the best, soil, better than South Tulsa and all that.
For Parker, food sovereignty is directly tied to health and wellness.
I'm just saying white people eat right because they got the money to afford all this stuff. But we don't have the money, and we just got to eat fast foods. And we don't have the money to, we do have, but we don't know how to eat right. So Black food is teaching us how to eat right. Now we're eating right.
From kitchens to conferences to community gardens, Black food sovereignty is growing stronger in Tulsa and beyond. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Juddie Williams in Tulsa.
You're listening to Focus Black Oklahoma. In our first segment about music and social movements, Francia Allen explored how gospel, blues, and songs of the civil rights movement helped elevate the voices of resistance for African Americans. In part 2 of the series, she focuses on the powerful ways Indigenous communities have raised their voices in resistance and pushed back against cultural discrimination, immigration issues, and treaty violations while staying connected to Native traditions. Here's FBO's Francia Allen.
Native Americans have been on the continent of North America for 50,000 years and have always been committed to fighting for land rights and sovereignty by challenging the U.S. government in court to ensure treaties are being honored. Tribal nations have organized protests against big corporations that harm environments considered sacred. For instance, multiple nations joined in solidarity with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe at the Standing Rock Indian Reservation in protest of the Dakota Access Pipeline being built near their water supply. Those in attendance chanted "Stop the Pipeline" and participated in tribal rituals like singing, dancing, and drumming. The song Stand Up / Stand and Rock, #NoDAPL by Indigenous hip-hop artist Taboo commemorated that experience by speaking a message of unity and pride. Cherokee Nation artist Candace Bird Boney is a singer, dancer, poet, and musician who plays both the Western concert flute and Native American cedar flute. She is also the Cherokee National Youth Choir director. Candace spoke about the origin of her connection to music and relationship with the big drum, an instrument that is highly revered within most First Nation tribes.
I guess my journey with music has been lifelong. My first experiences with music is dancing, exposure to dance. When I was little, I grew up around the drum, what they call the big drum, at the powwows and also in ceremony and social dances. I grew up around that drum, and my grandmother, she's gone now, but my maternal grandmother, Ardina Reeve Ardmore, she used to say, from the time that we're babies, from the time before we're born, we're rocking those babies, we are patting them on the back to the rhythm of that drum. And so that beat has always been with me. And when I got older, I was taught to dance in the Southern Plains style of the Quapaw and the Osage and Cherokee people.
Another concern important to many Native Americans is bringing awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, because Indigenous women are 10 times more likely to be assaulted, go missing, or be murdered than non-Indigenous women, and often denied national attention, according to the National Congress of American Indians on ncai.org. The Center for Relationship Abuse Awareness website states that gender-based violence, including sexual assault and physical violence, is committed against 78% to 85% of Indigenous Two-Spirit individuals. After disappearing on January 27, 2025, from a group home for girls in Mesa, Arizona, 14-year-old Emily Pike of the San Carlos Apache tribe was found dismembered on February 14th on the side of Arizona Highway 61. Her killer remains at large. Candace shares more about this issue.
We just ran through May, and May is the time here where we observe missing and murdered Indigenous people, missing and murdered Indigenous women, and our Two-Spirit relatives. You know, we have a pandemic going on. It is really, really concerning. And there was a lady named Fawn Wood, and she co-wrote this song with Randy Wood. Now, they're from up north. They're Cree. They're Canadian First Indigenous peoples, and they wrote this song. It's an old song, but they wrote this song called Remember Me. And when TikTok came along and social media came along, a lot of youth especially picked up that song, Remember Me, which is it's a hand drum song. And they started using that to memorialize these missing and murdered Indigenous people, missing and murdered Indigenous women. And it's a really uplifting song. The lyrics go, remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky, there I will be. Remember me, down the road, hand in hand, you and I will be. Remember me. It's a beautiful hand drum song.
Mexicans who have been in North America for 6,000 years were initially invited into the newly developing United States. now 249 years old, to help build railroads and work agricultural jobs. When given the opportunity to obtain citizenship, many jumped at the chance and began building a life with their families for generations, in spite of continuous discrimination and exploitation. In 1965, migrant workers in California launched a farm labor strike under the leadership of Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez. The Puerto Rican Young Lords also made a significant impact because they fought for fair treatment in the healthcare industry of Yonkers, New York, by marching and chanting, "Be Brown and Be Proud," as well as staging a 12-hour takeover at Lincoln Hospital on July 14, 1970. It resulted in the Young Lords collaborating with the Black Panther Party and local doctors writing the first Patients' Bill of Rights following the takeover. Recent protests have centered around immigration and citizenship. In spite of the disparaging narratives promoted by the Trump administration about the Latino community and the threat of the Immigration Customs Enforcement, or ICE agents, kidnapping people from their families, immigrants from various countries have still organized and shown their resistance to a country that has benefited from their labor, money, culture, taxes, and distinguished military service. Luis Rojas is a Mexican-American in Tulsa whose origin story is common to generations of Hispanic citizens and undocumented immigrants in the United States. He describes himself as a border walker because of the time he spent between Mexico and the United States, enabling him to live the American dream with his parents. Luis, who was a child during the 60s, describes his experience this way.
My parents immigrated here, well, at least on my mom's side. Her father was born in Fort Worth and her mom was born in Chicago. And yet, by the Depression, they reverse immigrated back to Mexico because of the financial situation, kind of like today. So she was actually born in Fresnillo, Zacatecas, and then she met my dad. So they immigrated here during the Eisenhower program to rebuild the nation's freeway system. And I was born in El Paso, but moved a month after I was born. They moved to Los Angeles and lived there. Became American citizens in time. So I'm a son of an immigrant.
Rojas experienced a conservative Catholic upbringing, so his connection to popular music was delayed. However, as a former pastor at both English and Spanish-speaking churches, he felt the power of the Spirit through the music, especially in the Latino community. Music connected him to his Mexican culture. At a time, he was in predominantly white spaces within the Adventist community.
And I was given a church in West Texas along the way. And I'll never forget walking into that church and hearing music the way I used to hear it when I was still a Catholic. It was powerful because the guitars and the accordion, the festive nature of the music that was done with the hymns. And this church was Adventist, but it was not this restrictive, killing your spirit. It was wonderful to feel, to breathe the spirit, to feel the spirit of what was possible, even within an enclosed Adventist culture. Un día a la vez, one day at a time, just the classic hymns, to sing, to hear them sung with such feeling, with, like I said, accordion and guitars, and when I would conduct baptisms, the power of the music was done with Mexican instrumentation, because in my English churches, it was just piano organ, and it was so formal, and they would have labeled that music satanic, and yet, so I was always crisscrossing worlds and how they applied the arts. And I'm just so thankful that I was exposed to that, because in time I would carve out my own path as to what would mean something to me.
Today, Luis is a retired insurance agent, as well as a proud husband, father, and grandfather, and he still speaks with the heart of a pastor. He expressed the following message at the end of this talk.
My purpose is to let people know they are mattered, they are loved beyond belief, and to believe it. And whatever it is, through music, through the fellowship of our food, from all the enrichment of all of God's people, we either all are or none of us are. I just believe we all are. And that's the most important thing I can convey, that no matter what form, be it in a book, in music, in art, find the love and live the love.
For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Francia Allen in Tulsa.
Would you like to pitch a story to FBO or work with us as a correspondent? Please email us at contact@focusblackoklahoma.com or call 918-807-3886. The international conference, Black Portraitures, will be hosted by New York University-Tulsa, Friday, October 3rd. The 10th in the series, the event will bring together scholars and artists to study the art and culture of the African Diaspora. Dr. Deborah Willis, university professor and chair of the Department of Photography and Imaging at the Tisch School of Arts at New York University, has been a co-organizer since 2006. For more information and registration online, visit blackportraitures.info.
It's a conference that has the theme Black Portraitures, and not necessarily thinking of photography or painting, but the idea of storytelling. It started in 2013. I worked with my colleagues here at New York University, Mancha Diawara and Awam Apfa and Cheryl Finley, who's down at Spelman, organizing storytelling conferences, a way to seek ways to basically engage in scholarship about Black culture internationally. And so the conversation started in Paris, as I mentioned, in 2013. We moved on to Florence, South Africa, and Johannesburg. We've also had it here at NYU and at Harvard. I worked with Henry Louis Gates at Harvard to also enhance the experience with the story of history, art, and activism. So what we hope to do in Tulsa, when NYU opened a campus in Tulsa, was an opportunity for us to talk about the work that we're doing and to consider the stories of Tulsa, but also the whole aspect of migration. So we're looking, as we consider the conference, as a convening of intergenerational scholars from across the country. So we decided this year to open up the conversation with artists and educators, as I mentioned earlier, as well as historians. It's a day-long program. We have titles such as Reimagining Tulsa, Black Wall Street, The Archive, and Art and Activism with Music and Writing. It's an extension, as I mentioned, from other places. So what we hope to do with Tulsa is to continue to expand on the questions about the city and the aspect of the experience of Black Tulsa and Black Wall Street. But also there's the popular culture that we know in America in terms of throughout. We know of the unfortunate massacres. When I think about Black Portraitures and what we experience in creating the conference, we learned from the visitors that their stories are overlooked in terms of their stories, in terms of African American diasporic stories, are not necessarily shown or embraced in larger communities. So this is what we're hoping to expand upon, but also invite the people from the community and scholars as well.
Thanks for joining us on Focus Black Oklahoma. Sondra Slade serves up a slice of life tale about her first experience with allergies. Please be advised, this story may contain whimsy, humor, and nostalgia.
Did you know you could develop allergies at any age? I didn't, and wow, did it throw me for a loop. For my 11th birthday, my mom was making the cake, my dad had the grill set up outside, and my aunt had made the decorations. The neighborhood kids were all invited, and I could hardly wait. That Saturday morning, I woke up early and went into the kitchen as the smell of pancakes and bacon were wafting through the air. My mom was in her yellow flowered muumuu, and just beneath her yellow and blue scarf, her rollers were sticking out. Back then, I thought my mom was a master pancake flipper. till I got older and realized she had a huge spatula. My dad gave me a big hug as he was passing by and at the same time swiped some bacon from the platter. My mom, half yelling, half laughing, told my dad to wait till it was time to eat. He laughed and said, "If you can't catch me, then it doesn't count." I sat down ready to eat. Next to a French toast breakfast, this was the best. My sister came stumbling in, not because she was drunk. She was a toddler and had to wear corrective shoes. My mom reminded me not to get too full on the pancakes because my dad was going to grill. I could just taste the hot dogs with slightly burnt pieces with mustard and onions. I had my birthday clothes laid out. My sneakers, my pink socks, pink and orange flowered skirt, and my orange blossom shirt. I couldn't wait to wear my new clothes. I put on some regular clothes so I could ride my bike around the neighborhood. The first place I stopped was Miss Pat's place. She had a daycare and was also the candy lady. She told me I could pick out 4 pieces of penny candy since it was my birthday. The smell of garbage hit me. As I was picking out what sweets I couldn't wait to get, she was telling me about her no-good teenage daughter. Miss Pat was a large woman with a voice that sounded like a flute with too many holes in it. She said Tiffany, her daughter, couldn't find her way out of a paper bag. Apparently, Tiffany did not take out the garbage and the whole house was smelling. Miss Pat said Tiffany would lose her head if it wasn't already on her body. I got my 4 pieces and reminded her of the party and hurriedly got out of there because the smell was getting to be too much. As I rode around the neighborhood, I waved at some neighbors, then pulled up to my friends who were over in the parking lot of the high school behind our neighborhood. I watched Brandon do some wheelies off the speed bumps, then Terry and I took off so we could go see the outfit she was wearing for my party. It was getting warm, and my mom had told me not to sweat out my curls. However, they were fast becoming flat in the heat. At Terry's house, we stopped outside to get a drink from the hose and grab some honeysuckles. Once inside, we went to her room, and she had her strawberry shortcake shirt out with her pleated jean shorts. We sat on her bed looking at books. Then I saw the clock, and it was noon. I headed back to the house, trying to make sure the remaining curls would not go away. When I got back home, I headed to my room before my mom could see me. The smell of cake was coming down the hall, mixed with the smell of charcoal being started. I pinned my hair up fast as I could, and I yelled down the hall I was taking a shower. My mom said, "I'm glad you don't need to smell like outside today." I was getting to use her Avon smell goods. After my shower, I laid down till my mom told me to start getting dressed. Kids would be coming over to play on the swing set. Passing through the kitchen, I stood so my mom could inspect me. While she looked at my half-fallen hair, I was eyeing the 2-layer cake that she had on the counter. She caught a glimpse of me and said, "I haven't iced it, and you will have enough later." I bounced outside to watch my dad barbecue. Taking a piece of hot dog, I ran a bit and said, "You can't catch me." Kids and adults started coming in. My mom had the table set up, and the kids and I started swinging and running around. My aunt and my uncle came over and were the unofficial DJs. I remember the Ohio Players and Isaac Hayes on repeat. The party was in full swing, people eating, laughing, dancing, and enjoying themselves. Then it was time for cake. My mother brought it out the house with the number 11 on top of it, all lit up. She placed the platter right in front of me, and there was this 2-layer coconut ice cake, so fluffy and moist looking. After everybody sang happy birthday, I blew out the candles and my mom cut the cake, making sure to give everybody a piece. Of course, I was served first, and by the time she was done, I was finished eating mine and went to party with my friends. After a while, I felt hot and asked if I could change. My mom said, of course. I went to change and felt itchy, so I put some lotion on. I went back outside and started playing. I was getting really thirsty and went to grab a pop out of the styrofoam container. That cool water felt so good, I stuck both hands in there. My dad looked over and told me just to grab one. I moved, then I felt like laying down. When I woke up, I was in my room and my mom was asking me how I felt. I told her I was dizzy. Earlier, unbeknownst to me, I had gone to sit down and the condiments were on the bench. They went flying through the air as I was tumbling to the ground. They had splattered on Mrs. Pat's daughter, Tiffany, and her boyfriend. Miss Pat just sat there and laughed. I also had tried to cool my face off in the container, apparently. I looked at my mom, who said, "We're going to the hospital." Once there, they asked my mom a bunch of questions. That's when we found out I was allergic to shredded coconut. The only thing I was upset about, though, was that I missed the rest of the party. I stay away from everything with shredded coconut. However, I put coconut oil in my hair and on my body, but I stay away from shredded coconut. My mother, however, has offered me almond joys, coconut breaded shrimp, to which I'm also allergic to, and German chocolate cake. When I remind her, she says, "Oh, I keep forgetting. It's only me and my 2 sisters, and I'm the only one with allergies." Fast forward to this past Memorial weekend. My Aunt Frances, the rodeo queen, is also known for her sweets, namely her cookie brownie combination. This time, she made her equally famous chocolate cake. I couldn't wait to tear into it. I spied it when it was still in the container, and my mouth started watering. I stacked my plate up with other various delights, roll sandwiches, fruit, chips, and cookies. I walked back up to the table with a special plate just for my cake. Just before I got ready, my cousin was finished slicing her piece. I looked, it seemed like something was white on the knife. Me thinking to myself, she must have hit that on something. But as I got closer to the cake, I could see the shredded coconut on the knife and my heart sank. My aunt saw me walk away and asked why I didn't want cake. I told her because it has coconut on it. She said, "So?" And I told her I was allergic. To which she replied, "It's just on the bottom." I said, "Auntie, that means people have used a knife and cut into the cake, which put the coconut everywhere else." Then she said, "Just wipe it off." I told her that's not how allergies work. So if you are hearing this and you hear that I passed due to an allergic reaction, it will be because of my family, since no one apparently understands how allergies work.
Focus, Black Oklahoma is produced in partnership with KOSU Radio and Tri-City Collective. Additional support is provided by the Commemoration Fund and Press Forward. Our theme music is by Moffat Music.
Focus, Black Oklahoma's executive producers are Quraish Ali Lansana and Bracken Clark. Our associate producers are Jesse Ulrich and Naomi Agnew. Our production interns are Alexander Evans, Jess Grimes, Roma Carter, and Anna Wilson.
You can visit us online at kosu.org or focusblackoklahoma.com and on YouTube at Tri-City Collective OK. You can follow us on Instagram at focusblackok and on Facebook at facebook.com/focusblackok.com. You can hear Focus Black Oklahoma on demand at kosu.org, the NPR app, npr.org, or wherever you get your podcasts.
As you go about your morning routine, there are a few things that are a must. You brush your teeth, put on a fresh pair of clothes, maybe even try to eat something before rushing out the door. You are busy. That's why we started the KOSU Daily Podcast, so you can get all the news you need while you're on the go. Subscribe to the KOSU Daily Podcast today.
Oklahoma City is pretty big. Take it from Mayor David Holt.
The city limits of Oklahoma City clock in at 620 square miles. That means we are the size of 8 Cleveland, Ohios. Washington, D.C., yeah, we could take 10 of those. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we're 11 Pittsburghs.
Luckily, KOSU's OKC Guide is here to break it all down, district by district. Head to kosu.org/OKC Guide to check it out.